After the first vertebrates entered land, two lineages diverged. Okay, one was the amphibians that were fairly dependent upon water, since they required water for reproduction and respiration. And another group, the amniotes, became more independent of water because they had several adaptations for water conservation and reproduction away from water. This group, the amniotes, was named after the amnion, one of the four membranes that evolved to protect the developing embryo. These specialized membranes, the amnion, chorion, yolk sac, and allantois, help to keep water close to the developing embryo. The amniotic eggs of most reptiles and some mammals, the few of the mammals that do lay eggs, have a shell. The shell provides additional support that slows down dehydration of the egg and helps to hold in water. Most mammals no longer have an eggshell. Instead, the embryo develops within the amnion inside the mother's body. Another important adaptation that amniotes has that distinguishes them from amphibians is the use of a flexible rib cage that expands and contracts to ventilate or push air in and out of their lungs. This allows for efficient delivery of oxygen to the body and efficient removal of carbon dioxide. This increased breathing efficiency allowed the amniotes to evolve a less permeable skin, or another way to say that would be a tougher, more waterproof skin, which allowed for better water conservation. Keep in mind that amphibians had to keep their skin moist for respiration. So more efficient lungs means that amniotes didn't have to rely on the skin for respiration. Living amphibians and amniotes split from one another about 350 million years ago when they shared a common ancestor. The early amniotes lived in warm, moist habitats and gradually adapted to become better and better capable of living in drier and drier places. There are two large terrestrial clades of amniotes: the reptiles, which also include the birds, and the mammals. The earliest reptiles lived about 310 million years ago, while the common ancestor of amphibians and amniotes was a lot more amphibian-like. Living members of the reptile clade include the tuataras, which is a lizard-like organism from New Zealand, the lizards and snakes, which are closely related, turtles, crocodilians, and the birds. Birds shared a common ancestor with the dinosaurs, but their closest living relative is the crocodilians. Reptiles have several derived characters that distinguish them from the amphibians in addition to the amniotic egg. They have tough, dry scales that create a waterproof barrier between them and the environment. Most of them have internal fertilization, whereas amphibians lay their eggs that are then fertilized by the male outside of the mother's body. External fertilization depends upon water, and internal fertilization does not. Most reptiles lay eggs with shells on land. Most are also what we call ectothermic. This means that they absorb heat from the environment, or they take in heat from outside of their body. Remember that the prefix ecto means on the outside of, and therm refers to heat. Birds, a special group of reptiles, are endothermic. This means that they can maintain their body temperature through internal metabolism. Okay, endo meaning inside of the body. Endothermic is a trait that allows organisms to maintain a body temperature that's very different from the environmental temperature. And it's a trait that evolved twice, once in birds and once in mammals. Okay, we know that it evolved 2 separate times, since birds and mammals are not closely related, and the other relatives of birds that are more closely related are ectothermic. Birds are a particularly diverse and interesting group of reptiles that's evolved the adaptation of flight. Birds appeared in the fossil record around 160 million years ago. One reason that they're so well adapted for flight is because they have such a lightweight body. They have no urinary bladder. In fact, they produce waste that's very non-toxic and doesn't require a large amount of water for safe storage. Females of most species have only one ovary, and the gonads or reproductive structures of birds are very small except for when they're needed during the breeding season. They have hollow, lightweight bones which reduce the weight of the skeleton, and they lack teeth. Instead, their beak is able to obtain the food that they need, and a sharp curved beak in predatory bird species allows for the tearing of flesh. Other adaptations for flights include wings, which are very aerodynamically shaped, and feathers. They have large pectoral or breast muscles that allow a lot of power for fast wing flapping and powerful takeoff. The shape of the breastbone has a keel or a big ridge extending outward that allows for the anchoring of large amounts of pectoral muscle tissue. Their respiratory and circulatory systems are extremely efficient, including a 4-chambered heart. We'll discuss in a later chapter how that makes gas exchange extremely efficient. The efficiency of the system allows a lot of energy to be dedicated to the highly active activity of flight, which burns a lot of calories. Color vision and acute eyesight make flying very safe, since the birds need to see well to be able to land and take off effectively. They also have extremely well-developed visual and motor areas of the brain. In fact, birds are highly intelligent. So certainly don't call anyone a bird brain as an insult. Mammals are the other living lineage included within the amniotes. They also have many derived traits that are found in mammals only. Mammals are named for the special mammary glands that produce milk to feed their young. They're also the only organisms that have hair, and they have a special fat layer under the skin that helps keep the mammal warm and helps to provide calories for times when food is scarce. The mammalian kidney also has special adaptations for conserving water during waste removal. And mammals have a high metabolic rate due to their endothermic characteristic. So mammals consume a lot of calories compared with a reptile of a similar size. Mammals also have a relatively large brain when compared to other organisms of similar size, and differentiated teeth that allow for specialized feeding mechanisms. Mammals evolved from a group known as the synapsids, or mammal-like reptiles. The first true mammals are found in the fossil record around 180 million years ago. By 140 million years ago, 3 lineages of mammals had emerged, and all of these lineages still have living representatives today. These groups are the monotremes, which are egg-laying mammals. There are only 3 living species, the duck-billed platypus and 2 species of echidna, the species pictured here that looks a lot like a hedgehog. The marsupials reproduce differently. Instead of laying eggs, they give birth to a very tiny and very underdeveloped baby. They then raise that baby in a pouch until it gets bigger and more self-sufficient. The eutherian mammals are known as the placental mammals, because of the special structure known as the placental that protects the baby during embryonic development. The eutherians have a very efficient reproductive system that allows the baby to be born in a more highly developed state than the marsupials. For this reason, eutherian mammals have outcompeted marsupials and monotremes in most areas. Australia still has some monotremes and a lot of marsupials because eutherian mammals evolved after Australia was isolated from the rest of the other continents. So the eutherian mammals couldn't get there. All of the eutherian mammals that we see in Australia today have been introduced by humans. We'll wrap up this exciting chapter by talking about human evolution. Humans, with the scientific name of Homo sapiens, are in a group of mammals known as the primates. They're also in a subcategory of the primates that's informally called apes. Humans are distinguished from other apes by their upright posture and bipedal locomotion. Bipedal means walking on two legs. Even though some apes temporarily walk upright, they can only maintain that for short periods of time before reverting back to walking on all fours. Humans also have extremely large brains when compared with primates of similar sizes. This allows complex language, symbolic thought, artistic expression, and the use of very complex tools and complex problem solving. These traits evolved gradually in our ancestors, since the fossil record shows that there were other species in the genus Homo around a few million years ago, and other genera that appear closely related to humans, such as Australopithecus. We can see the gradual progression of the development of bipedalism and a larger brain size when we look at the fossil record. This phylogeny here shows all of the primates, with the basal group as the lemurs, and then we can see the organisms that we call the apes. They differ from other primates because they've lost a tail in adult organisms. Although there are several extinct genera that are more closely related to humans, the closest living relatives of humans are the chimpanzees and bonobos. The species Homo sapiens appears to have originated around 200,000 years ago, as the oldest fossils that we classify as Homo sapiens are from Ethiopia and dated at about 195,000 and 160,000 years ago. Fossils indicate that humans originated in Africa and later spread around the globe.